Hey everybody, welcome back to Burek Saga. Today we are starting on Chapter 6, which is another fairly long main mission, but really this is the calm before the storm because it's not all that difficult. And at time of recording, I am up to the next main mission in Chapter 7, and to be honest, that looks like a complete nightmare. So let's enjoy Chapter 6 while it lasts. Alright, so we're going to be picking up some money first from the rewards. First, there's a bounty that we picked up, and also we managed to get a blood knife drop in the last map, which can be sold to the collector for a bit more money. I did consider keeping it rather than selling it to him, but really I don't think Zine or Thaddy is really going to make any use out of it. So next up we want to trade a few things to Owen. First, the Blizzard Tome, so he has something to defend himself, and then I'm also giving him Azurna's Heal, so that he has a healing orb that isn't the Physic. Kramer also takes his Eagle Brace back, because we don't need Sherpa for the upcoming map, so there's no use leaving it on him. And then I've left on the Mercenary Warning, so we're going to be having to get used to the Mercenary screen at the end of every chapter. And obviously I rehire most of the relatively cheap guys and leave the super expensive ones for later. So, as has become traditional at the start of a chapter, we get another letter from Lynette, and this time it's money again, which is very nice. And I think that money pretty much makes up for all of the hiring that I have to do for this chapter, which is also good. But we're not quite done with hiring at this point. I need to go and hire Ruby manually because she was crippled and so she wasn't in the rehiring menu. So we do that, and I'm also going to be taking some vulneraries away from Arthur because I haven't hired him in quite a while and I've been using up all my healing, so I need to grab those so that I don't have to spend money on more vulneraries. I'm also hiring Axel for this chapter because he's more reliable in combat than Zine, and killing the enemies in houses is pretty good. Now, there's a brief cutscene here which is basically acting as a hint that we need to deploy Esteban on this map in order for his permanent recruitment to happen, so we're definitely going to do that. His permanent recruitment actually has quite a few events that need to be fulfilled, so I think it's one of the more elaborate ones, and I'm actually kind of interested to see where the rest of that story goes. Anyway, I have now deactivated some units so that I can once again pour food into all of my happiness requirement mercenaries, including Volo. I got a bit unlucky. There's not actually any food here that Volo or Kramer actively like, but we can still feed them something to give them a little bit of an edge that they at least don't dislike. I'm actually shelling out for the most expensive dish here on most of these units, which is a little bit of a drain on my funds, but I think it's worth it overall. And I believe that that particular meal is an A rank meal, which means it's maximizing the happiness gain for my units. Owen is getting a meal that boosts his magic by 3 though, which is going to help his healing totals for the upcoming chapter. So that's pretty good. I'm still hoping that the really good food is going to show up at some point. I won't mention what it is, but hopefully it comes up eventually. With that out of the way, all that's left is to reactivate the units that I'm going to deploy, so let's talk about the map itself. I once again have to deal with a green unit escape map, which, I don't know, is that like Kaga's favorite objective or something? Because it just keeps coming up and it's irritating every time. We're getting a new unit at the start of this map called Enid, and she has to talk to each of the green units who need to escape before they will start moving for the escape point. So we want to have her do that right at the start of the map as quickly as possible. There are 5 green units that Enid can talk to scattered around the map, but luckily for us, only 3 of them have to escape in order to win the map, so that's what we're going to be doing. Now, something groundbreaking happening on this map is that for the first time I am choosing to undeploy Ward, and I feel like undeploying your Jagan for the first time is always a turning point in any Fire Emblem game, so here we go. I'm also deploying Volo here because I've kind of been neglecting him, and he can be recruited starting from the next chapter, so I'm going to be deploying him consistently throughout this chapter in order to accelerate his happiness gain up to 12 as fast as possible. Now, in addition to the green units that Enid needs to talk to in order to get them moving, there are another couple of green units on this map, one of whom is Enid's mother, and they both have to escape as well, but there's absolutely no chance of them failing to do so, so they're not super important to the strategy. So now let's talk about some side objectives, starting with Axel's path around the map. There are 2 sparkly tiles that he needs to visit, and the first of them is right next to his deployment zone. Axel manages to get a disarm proc against the enemy as well as killing him, which means that in addition to the normal treasure reward here, I also get the item that the guy was using, which is a military fork. Axel then needs to head towards the upper right part of the map to the other sparkling tile before making his way to the escape point. Now on turn 1, there are no enemies at all on the map other than the one in the search spot, so that means I'm free to divide up my army and get them moving towards where they need to be first. So let's start with Enid, because she is the main limiting factor on how fast you can complete this map. There are 3 green units in close proximity who she is able to talk to in the first 3 turns, and they are the ones who are going to escape. If I sent Enid out to talk to the 4th one, I don't think it would cost any turns per se, but it does make a later side objective more difficult to complete. Enid's thing in this map is that she cannot leave the map by any means, even by using the escape tile, until every single one of the green units has either escaped or died. And that's a real pain to work around, because one of the green units is all the way in the upper part of the map. We're going to talk to him shortly, and in order for him to escape, it would take a lot of turns for Enid to get up there, and then even more turns for both of them to get back to the escape point. So unfortunately, I am going to be letting the 2 of the green units who I don't have time to talk to die in order to lower our turn count just a bit. So, rip green units. Laurentia is heading into that area next to the green unit I just mentioned because there are 2 civilian requests up there. The first one that she's going to do involves entering the shop, and while she's in there she's also going to buy the mithril sheets just in case. I chose to do this one first because she can do the other one, which is talking to the green unit, while not being standing on the shop tile. And that means that after completing that, she would be able to mount up and fly away on that same turn, rather than having to move off the shop before she can mount up. So, Volo and Esteban have no role in this map. All they are doing is rushing for the escape point as quickly as possible. Which is a pretty boring role, but that's how it is. We can see that the first knot of enemies has reached the first green unit, and they are currently in the process of murdering them, which is a shame, but it's what we have to do. It's been somewhat difficult for me to get enemies to move up to Gonzage in the north, so pulling right back is the only reliable way I found to do it on this clear. The last group of allies with a purpose is the group that I've sent to the southwest, consisting of Dean, Owen, Reese, and Ruby. The purpose here is to defeat the 3 enemies who appear here to prevent them from interfering with something that Enid has to do later on. and also to feed as many of these kills as possible into Dean. Unfortunately, Reese takes things a bit too far, getting a critical hit when I only intended for him to chip, but that's not too bad. Reese is here because his commander skill gives an extra 10 hit to Dean, making the kills that much more reliable. And as Enid comes down here to help out, she will also be giving an extra +3 hit with her charisma skill, which has a ridiculous range in this game of 5 hexes. So it's a little bit of extra boost, but the range is absolutely amazing. Axel has reached the second sparkly tile, and this one doesn't involve a battle, so we just get that wolf pelt for free. And now Axel is also just going to be rushing to the escape point as fast as possible. And I'm very glad that, unlike the escape point in the Adel cave map, you do not need to wait for the green units to escape before you can start escaping with your units this time. To be completely honest, I don't believe that such a mechanic would have cost me a turn in this map, but it's still good to be able to just throw my units out there so I don't have to think about them anymore. Now, Ruby is helping to chip down an enemy, and in a moment Enid will be as well. Enid has a pretty high crit rate with her Lady Sword, but I wouldn't have minded too much if she had gotten that crit, because Enid is another unit who I actually need to level up a bit for recruitment purposes later on. In order to permanently recruit Derek, Enid actually needs to reach 5 magic, and because of the tight bracketing that she has and her 20% magic growth, she needs to gain at least 5 levels before she is able to reach the requisite magic. This is somewhat mitigated because, like Ruby, Enid has the Paragon skill, but it does mean I'm going to have to worry about rigging magic levels too. So I haven't yet talked about Kramer's role on this map. He is here almost entirely for self-improvement at this point. He gained an awful lot of experience in the last couple of maps, so he's my closest unit to level 10 out of the 4 who need to get there, and so I want to kind of focus as much experience into him as possible to get that done, and so that's what he is doing on this map. Of course, this is still an escape map, so he is going to have to rush for the escape point too with his piddly 4 movement, but he has enough turns with all of the other side objectives that I need to complete that he is still going to be able to get a fair chunk of experience in the process. So we just got the save point, meaning it's now turn 5, and the map is halfway over. So my infantry units are having to rush to the escape point as much as they can. And that includes Silvis, who, like Volo and Esteban, doesn't really have much of a purpose. I had previously been using her to assist Dean instead of Ruby and Reese, but it turned out that she was unable to escape in time from this point in the map, no matter what I did to help down there, so I decided to default to my cavalry units instead. So Owen is using the escape orb on Dean because, like Silvis, he doesn't have enough movement to escape in the same turn count as everyone else at this point. I kind of wish that I had healed with Owen on the previous turn, but that's okay because that would have just been for experience gain. And Dean is now off the map and we don't have to worry about his hit point level. Enid is standing around down there not doing anything because she is waiting for another side objective, which in this case is a unit who we can recruit on this map by talking to him with Enid. And this is the limiting factor that makes this map take as long as it does due to the full recruitment requirement on this run. If I didn't have to recruit him, I think it would still take about as long because of the green units, maybe 1 turn less, but it wouldn't cost escape orb uses. Ruby and Kramer are tag teaming some of these enemies. Ruby is mostly doing it to try and knock the enemies down low enough that Kramer will kill them on counter, but she is also obviously trying to train her weapon ranks. and she is much more efficient at fighting these enemies because she can hit and run thanks to Kanto, and her high movement gives her a lot more leeway too. Now, at the start of turn 6, the green unit who we want to recruit appears. His name is Percival, and he is a Thunder Mage, but we are not going to be talking to him just yet. We actually want him to move over to us before we talk to him, because he has no purpose on this map, and he needs to be within Owen's escape orb range on this turn. Percival comes with a Dire Thunder Orb, which in this game is a plus weapon rather than a brave weapon, so it's probably slightly better, but as mentioned, it is not going to see any use on this map. One funny thing on this map is that some of the enemies have really funky AI that directs them to move onto houses and then just stand there. And that unfortunately means that they're not going to go for Ruby or Kramer, so they're not viable experience gain or weapon experience gain targets. That's annoying, but it is what it is. And honestly, AI in this game is just so weird sometimes. I don't understand it at all. Right, enemies have now reached Gonzage, and they are going to brutally murder him over the next couple of turns. Although he does do surprisingly well for someone of his age. Remember that I am not able to get Enid off the map until all of the green units are dead, so it's very important that these enemies kill him in the allocated turns. Percival has now moved up, and so Enid is going to talk to him in order to recruit him. And then we need to have someone escape on this turn. So obviously Owen is going to be using the escape orb on Percival, because Gonzage still isn't dead. The escape orb is really demonstrating its use in this map. I'm going to have used it 3 times in order to complete this map in time, and that's going to save 3 turns compared to the clear I did in which I had Enid walk all the way to the escape point after recruiting Percival. When I first did this map and noticed that I couldn't use the escape orb on Enid right at the start, I assumed that I couldn't use it on her at all, and so I went ahead and did the entire map as well as I could without being able to use it on her. And I'm very glad that on one of those clears I tried to escape with her while the green unit was still on the map, and the withdraw option didn't pop up. And so that gave me the hint that maybe, just maybe, the condition was that the green units all had to be gone. And so I redid the map with that in mind, and that's what this clear came from. Anyway, the green units are all gone, and Enid has been sent back off the map. So all that's really happening is my units are doing a running retreat with Ruby in the back, trying to take as many hits as possible to get shield weapon experience. Owen seems to be too far away to reach the escape point, but obviously he has his return skill up his sleeve that allows him to teleport out at will at any time, which is extremely helpful on escape maps. Ruby gets brutally injured in her final combat of the map, and I'm very glad that she didn't end up crippled again, because that would have just ruined the entire ending of this map, because everyone is ready to escape. So I guess the enemy can have this town, but we don't care. We got everyone out who we care about. Rip to the dead green units. And that's the chapter completed in 8 turns. After the map, there's a little cutscene involving Esteban. It's related to his permanent recruitment. Anyway, that's all for this video, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.